Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 Plus and see how this particular phone holds up in 2025. Now, there's some really interesting stuff to keep in mind within this particular, phone when it comes down to it, because on some hands, yes, it's a really good looking phone still, but on some other hands, or in another hand, this isn't necessarily like the first phone I'd recommend people to buy anymore, and there might be some better devices to go and pick up rather than this phone when it comes down to it. So we'll take a look at all these things throughout this whole entire video. First things first though, if you do want to go ahead and pick up a phone like a Samsung Galaxy Note 10 Plus, or maybe some other phones that I would recommend buying this year actually, links will be down in the description below. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the exact same time. Now, starting off with the outside of the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 Plus, on the front side of this phone, you're getting a massive 6.8-inch dynamic AMOLED display. Now, this type of phone, for the most part, it is a very, very big size display when it comes down to it. It's probably one of the biggest displays you'll see in a phone, and it's a 1440p panel, and it is still a very good looking display when it comes down to it. You're getting very thin bezels on the top and the bottom, very thin bezels on the side, and it still looks like a very good panel. It's also very big, so it's going to be a nice looking panel. It's going to be large, it's going to be great, it's going to be everything you'd ever hope for in some ways from a 2019 phone. You have to remember that this phone came out in 2019, so it is missing out on a lot of things that you'd probably expect in a lot of modern phones. Number one, you're missing out on a 90 Hz or 120 Hz display. You are missing out on those things inside of this phone, which can be a really big downside. Like if you're going to go through and pick up a phone, you probably want to be able to go through and buy a phone that's going to be giving you some really cool features. Unfortunately, with this device, you are really missing out on that type of experience. So I feel like this in and of itself could be kind of a downside. It could be kind of a downgrade depending on who you are. So for me personally, I think that's kind of a downside there. And if you're going to go through and pick up a phone, I feel like that is one of the bigger issues here, is like going through and buying a phone if the feature set is already kind of outdated a little bit. But on one side, then there's that case, right? On the other side, you were still going through and getting an S Pen inside of this phone too, which having an S Pen I think is a really nice compliment to have inside of this phone, because the S Pen is one of the coolest features. It's such a nice thing to have, and Samsung removed it for a while, then they added it back. Since they've added it back, I am really happy about it, and it is a really cool feature. So at the end of the day, if you're going to go through and pick up this phone, yes, you're missing out on the 60, 90 Hz, 120 Hz display, but at least you're going through and getting an S Pen, right? That's like another kind of pro going on for this phone. You are getting USB Type-C port inside of this phone too, which is nice. You're getting a glass back on the back of this phone with wireless charging and reverse wireless charging. So you do have the capability of going through and getting wireless charging and reverse wireless charging inside of that device. So I do think that is another really, really cool thing going on for this type of phone when it comes down to it from that side. You're also going through and getting a triple camera setup inside of this phone too. So once again, being able to go through and get that triple camera setup, that's another really nice thing going on for this phone as well. So I do like having that type of capability as well. So when you take a look at the outside, I definitely am a fan of this phone, but it definitely is outdated in some ways. No frosted glass back, no 120 Hz display, and it's still a high resolution panel, but even a curved display, which I like, those are kind of also outdated too a little bit, just a little bit. So that's one of those things to kind of keep in mind there. The price tag of this phone is about $265 on Amazon right now, which is okay, that's a good price to pay. But again, for how old this phone is and for kind of the things you're lacking out on, you would probably have expected this phone to give you a little bit of a better experience here and there. But again, it's not the biggest deal in the world, but that could be one thing you might end up experiencing there. Now, on top of that, when it comes down to the cameras, this phone is going to be giving you a triple camera setup on the backside. So it's going to be a 12 megapixel wide, 12 megapixel telephoto, and then a 16 megapixel ultra wide camera. Then you're also getting a 0.3 megapixel depth camera, which is interesting. On the front side, you're getting a 10 megapixel wide angle camera. Now, luckily for us, we do have the capability of having 4K at 60 frames per second on the front side and the back side of this phone. So that is kind of a nice thing to basically have. Being able to go through and get that type of resolution of film, and I think is a really nice thing. But as you can probably imagine, it probably would make a lot more sense to go through and maybe get a different type of device. This thing is great, but since this phone, Samsung really knocked it out of the park, and in the Galaxy S20 and afterwards, they did give us 8K capability. So having 8K is really nice. I love having that type of capability when it comes down to it. And you are kind of missing out on that on this phone when it comes down to it. So I feel like from that particular situation, that is just one of those things to kind of keep in mind there. Again, it's not the biggest deal in the world, but from a camera standpoint, you probably would end up getting a better experience here and there, maybe from some other devices rather than this one. So from that side too, that's just kind of one of those minor things to keep in mind there. Now, on top of that, probably the biggest con of this phone, in my personal opinion, is probably the software updates. This phone is basically done getting any software updates anymore, right? This thing is basically outdated now, and it's been outdated for quite some time. So I would hate for you to go through and buy a phone like the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 Plus if the phone is already outdated by the time you buy it. So I feel like this in and of itself is kind of one of those issues, and it's kind of one of those problems. So I feel like with the Note 10 Plus, although it's a great phone in some ways, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to go and buy this phone anymore because it's already outdated with software updates. And like I said, if it's not getting any more updates, that means it's probably not getting any more features. And even the security updates might already be outdated too. So you don't want to have like an unsecure phone by the time you buy it either, which can possibly happen if you go through and buy a phone like this. And when it comes down to the battery size, it's a 4300 mAh battery, which is good, right? That's really not a bad or terrible battery size to have. But you would imagine that if you're going to go through and pick up a phone, you probably want it to have closer to 5000 mAh, especially with how big this phone is, considering all phones basically have 5000 mAh if they're over like 6.5 inches. But also, this thing's battery has probably degraded. It's probably down to like, less than 4,000, maybe around 4,000 or less than that at this point. So that's another one of those really big things to keep in mind here. The performance of this phone though really wasn't that bad, and it's really, it was good when it first came out. And it's still actually not that bad. You're getting the Qualcomm Snapdragon 855 chipset inside with 12 gigabytes of RAM. That's insane. Imagine having that much RAM back then. That is crazy. I think there were some MacBooks that were coming out on laptops that came out with 8 gigs of RAM. So this thing was giving you an insane amount of performance from that particular perspective. And even now in 2025, it isn't like a terrible performing device. Like this thing is still actually giving you like a pretty decent experience when it kind of comes down to it. And I do feel like from that particular perspective, if you're going to go through and pick up a phone, this thing is actually giving you like a pretty good experience when it comes down to it from that side. And I feel like personally, if I'm about to go through and pick up a phone, I actually do enjoy having a phone like that because it does give you a little bit of capability when it comes down to that side as well. So in my personal opinion, if I'm about to sum up this whole entire video, what I will definitely tell you is that the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 Plus is one of those types of phones that I look at, and I do think it was a really good phone when it first came out, but I do think in this day and age, it just doesn't really make a lot of sense to go and buy a phone like this because there are way better devices to go and pick up rather than this one, right? Think of phones like a Samsung Galaxy S23, S23 Plus, or S23 Ultra. Think of phones like a Google Pixel 8 or a Pixel 8 Pro, or an iPhone 14 Pro or 14 Pro Max. Those phones I would highly recommend way more than this particular phone when it comes down to it. But when this phone first came out, it was great, but I just don't think it's really worth buying anymore when it comes down to it. So from that side, that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that will mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.